Good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is. Professor, this is my COVID-19 final project. The topic that's going to be covered is going to be are the countermeasures being implemented by the state and national government actually working to help slow the spread of the coronavirus? Looking at the data sets that I used, the original first data set that I used was the John Hopkins data set that was attached to the original starter dashboard um, for the COVID-19 data set. The second one I used was the testing data set. It had data in there for total testing for the nation, positives, negatives, stuff like that. The third and final data set I used was the policy measures data set. Um, that had all the events that were in there. So as soon as the states started to declare, like, hey, we're closing down the restaurants and bars, it had the type of countermeasure being implemented and then the date attached to it for each individual state. So the three questions that I'm trying to answer during this whole storyboard is one, are the countermeasures helping or hurting when it comes to the spread of COVID-19? Two, what are the different types of countermeasures used in the United States? Three, was the national and state government response to COVID-19 quick enough to slow it down? So just some background information. I pulled this off of the internet. It's just a picture demonstrating, like, hey, this is what COVID-19 is, how to prevent it, what are the symptoms. So obviously prevention, you want to avoid contact with sick people, wash your hands, wear face masks to prevent the spread. So it's basically your social distancing aspect. For the transmission of it, that's a key part that's going to come into the further analysis and the data that I'm going to present as far as the visualizations go, because that 14-day incubation period is very important, because whatever countermeasures you do implement, you're not going to see those results nationwide or statewide for a solid 2 to 3 weeks to see if anything is even being productive. So we'll get to that later on in the presentation. So here, let's go ahead and jump back to the very first day, the 22nd. So up here, I have a list of like key events in the U.S. That'll go throughout this entire situation. So on the 22nd is our first reported case from Washington, D.C. during this time. Out in China and other countries, you already have reported cases. So this is the first report of a case being on U.S. soil. So we're going to go ahead and continue a little bit, let it play. As you can see, cases are popping up: Illinois, Arizona, California, Massachusetts, and then, let's see, we'll go until the 19th. So we'll go ahead and stop at the 19th. So at this point on the 19th, we do have cases at Washington, California, Arizona, Illinois, and Massachusetts. And the president announces, like, hey, like, nothing to worry about. Hey, this is under control. But at the same time, there hasn't been mass testing done. There hasn't been identifying or tracking patients who are positive asymptomatically and showing symptoms. So we're going to let it play a little bit longer. Let's go until the 13th. So we're going to continue. More and more, as you'll see, will pop up. Okay, so at this point on the 13th, every single state besides West Virginia has at least one reported confirmed case. And that's at this moment where it's declared a national emergency for the United States. Yeah. Let's see. And let's see. Okay, so the 20th, this is when it ramps up even more. Hey, we're going to close all borders down to travel. So U.S.-Mexico border, U.S.-Canada border, non-essential travel, non-business travel is no longer allowed to cross the border. Let's see. As you can see, New York here at this point has 8,000 cases. We got Texas with only 400, California 1,200, Washington 1,500. So where it started is only at 1,500 cases, and we got New York with over 8,000 cases. Continue here to the 22nd now. As you can see, New York gets very, very dark. And that's because they've already reached 52,000 cases from that 8,000 just 6 days ago. So mass spreading going on, especially in high population areas like New York. Michigan, you can see, is at almost 5,000. California at 5,000. So we're going to go ahead and continue here. And as you see, more and more countries are continuing to get darker and darker with more and more cases as it spreads. So we already passed April 3rd, but it's at that moment where they recommend, or the CDC recommends wearing face masks to help stop the spread. And at this point, the spread's continuing, and we get to April 16th, and at that point, you can see all the red on the map. The virus is really starting to get a hold of the population and continue to spread. And it's at this moment that government officials see that, hey, things might be starting to slow down a little bit from these preventative measures that I'll go into in the next couple slides. And so now we can start talking about reopening. But I'll just let this play out till the 30th, which is the end of the data set. And you can see just more and more continues to highlight red and show that things aren't necessarily completely under control. Okay. So now moving on to the next slide. So I broke up the countermeasures into 2 separate slides, so we'll go over this one pretty quick. So as you can see, just looking at here, these are just some of the states that were identified in the data set, saying like, hey, since these cases are continuing to increase, pretty much around the March 13th to the March 20th area, you see countermeasures of banning of large group gatherings, cancellation of large events, things like that. So for these large events, you can see New Jersey here has a max of 250 per event. In Colorado, banning of group gatherings more than 10 people. On to the next one. So border closing March 20th. We got these states enacting curfews, restaurants and bars closing, and then just look at the dates. They're all around the same area. So the March, we'll say 13th to the 23rd, right? So although not every single state is listed in this data set, they all follow the same pattern. Once one starts to declare like, hey, schools are closing because we need to slow down the spread, majority of them follow. As you can see here, they're all right around the same day where they're starting to close down. As we continue, so as far as testing goes, this is one of the really important things about the virus, is being able to identify who has the virus so that they can self-quarantine and help prevent the spread of the virus asymptomatically and with symptoms. This annotation right here shows that, hey, on the 13th, it was declared a national emergency for COVID-19. This leads to a rapid increase in testing. As you can see, it's exponentially going up. By the 30th, they've administered over 6 million tests, and there's over 1 million positive. So you're looking at 1/6 of the population that does get tested, whether they're showing symptoms or have been in contact with someone who was identified as positive, do have the virus. So it's very important. As you can see, this exponentially grows with the increase of testing for obvious reasons. You test more people, you'll get more results, whether that be positive or negative. Moving on, so the next one is going to be confirmed cases. I will start with confirmed cases. So as you can see, started out at February 26th just to make the data a little bit more condensed here. As we increase total in the sum of cases, you can see the increase in difference followed by a decrease in difference. And so this is the daily difference of the new cases. So as you can see, this highlighted section, majority of states take action May 13th through the May 23rd, like I mentioned earlier. And this goes back to, hey, we're not going to see these results of these countermeasures until 2 weeks later. So if we start at the 23rd and we go 2 weeks out, we're going to be about April 7th, April 8th, and as you can see, cases begin to top out around here. And then decrease over time. So as there's still an increase in cases, it's increasing at a decreasing rate. And then if we look at the deaths, it's even more prominent. So you have your sharp curve up, these countermeasures enacted by the state, local, and national governments top out around early April, and then you see a steady decrease of cases over time. And going to the final one, same thing here with critical patients. So we're looking at the hospitalized patients, the ICU patients, and those patients on ventilators. So majority of the states take action, same thing, 13th through the 23rd. You see that increase in cases, and then you see the steady drop off. Even though it's a little bit less gradual, then you could see the difference in cases because hospitalized patients are obviously more severe than your common patient. And we can go look at a state individually, like New Jersey, and you'll see the same. So New Jersey taking action, closing down restaurants, bars, schools, all that. You see the reporting actually begin late to be able to track these hospitalized patients and these ICU patients. So they don't even start reporting until the 5th and the 6th. For those ICU patients and patients on ventilators. And it's the same thing. Sudden pop, and even though it's very gradual, still a gradual decrease over time for those cases. And so that is the final slide in the story, and that concludes this presentation. Thank you.